JRPGs. Probably my favorite game genre of all time. You rely on your mind instead of your reflexes. There are always ways to get stronger like level ups, and are usually pretty story driven. Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, Final Fantasy VI, all amazing titles and some of the greatest games of all time. But like everything, the genre had to start somewhere, and well, like the genesis of anything, there are a million different candidates for the first, and the earliest examples haven't aged too well. One of the earliest and most influential JRPGs, especially on the console front, was the first Dragon Quest game, released on the Famicom all the way back in 1986. While it might not have been the absolute first, the groundwork it laid for future games cannot be overstated. It spawned a whole franchise, and inspired countless others, so we have a lot to thank it for. My opinions on the game itself are kind of mixed, because while I do overall like it, there are some flaws that stand out like a sore thumb. Without further ado, let's dive into it, and see what the original Dragon Quest is like, its pros, its cons, and if you should play it in 2024. Let's start with the story, which is probably the most basic, simple, cliche plot to any game to ever exist. Basically, there's this medieval-inspired kingdom, Alefgard. There's this evil guy, the Dragon Lord, who kidnapped the daughter of the king, Princess Gwaelin, and is holding her in a cave somewhere. The main character happens to be a knight descended from a hero of old that defeated the Dragon Lord in the past, and you need to go collect various items, rescue the princess, and defeat the Dragon Lord. Once you leave the castle, it's time to start fighting enemies in good old turn-based fashion. And while incredibly simple by today's standards, it was revolutionary for its time. All the classic characteristics of a JRPG can be found. Turn-based combat, stats that determine various factors in how well you fare in battle, magic, an overworld, villages to rest in and buy items, a command menu, equipment, a currency system, and after gaining enough experience points from defeating enemies, you gain a level up, which increases your stats. But Dragon Quest I suffers from an issue of being so groundbreaking and inspiring so many later works that the elements that made it so groundbreaking have been reused a lot, leading it to feel kind of boring by today's standards. It's like going back and watching old movies that define their genres, like Citizen Kane or a number of other classic movies. So in terms of plot and gameplay, I feel like we can't judge it for being too similar to every other RPG that followed it, because without it, those games wouldn't exist. What I can judge it by though, is the utter lack of real content. You could probably do everything there is to do in a game in a couple of hours, if it wasn't for one little thing: grinding. Grinding is a staple of every RPG in existence pretty much, even ones that are insanely easy probably need a little bit of it at some point, and of course, older RPGs have the tendency to need a crap ton of it. Anyone who's ever played Final Fantasy I or the original Mother, you know what I'm talking about. But oh boy, does this game blow those two out of the water in terms of how much time you'll spend grinding, especially in relation to your total time spent playing. Sure, you spend a lot of time fighting enemies to get stronger in Mother and the early Final Fantasies, yet there's a lot of story, bosses, and quests, etc. Dragon Quest though? No. There's very, very little objectives, other than to just fight enemies to get stronger so you don't die in 5 seconds. And it really doesn't help that there aren't any extra party members to help fight, although it's balanced by every battle only being against one enemy. So, right after starting your journey, there's a few things you need to do before even attempting to explore the world. First, you start the game off with quite a bit of gold. Use it to get a weapon, shield, and armor. After that, fight enemies nearby outside of town, which are just slimes and red slimes. Easy enemies, but they give very little experience. My advice is to spend a good half an hour or so just fighting these guys, until you finally have enough gold to buy some herbs to recover health, a good weapon, shield, armor, all that, and enough experience to level up till around level 4 or so. By this point, you'll learn your spells of heal and hurt, which are gonna come in handy. Seriously though, don't just jump into the great unknown without being prepared. It's honestly frustrating how many friends I've played old school RPGs with, they don't think they need to grind, and just keep dying and then quitting because they get frustrated. Now, I'm not gonna say any names, but you know who you are, Cody. So once you've gotten strong enough, go to Edric's cave, use a torch to light the room up, and find a tablet with a message written by the before mentioned legendary hero, and it tells the free items the player has to collect to defeat the Dragon Lord. Next, travel east, where you'll find stronger enemies. And you know what that means, don't you? More grinding and farming money to buy new equipment. Yay. I find what makes grinding take so long is just the fact once you're strong enough to beat an enemy in a single blow, they give out so little experience and money that you have to defeat tons and tons of them to get to the next level. But enemies that give more XP are too strong to easily beat, and will kill you if you're not careful. On the other side of this cave in the poison swamp lies another town, where you can buy these magic keys which unlock various doors in the world. Back at the castle, you can use one of these keys to find the secret cellar, which has the first of the 3 mystical items, the Stones of Sunlight. The second treasure can be found around the same time. Use another magic key to find an underground labyrinth in some dude's grave, and in it is a silver harp, which can be traded for a Staff of Rain, the second mystical item. If you travel back to the same swamp cave, and if you have a magic key, you can fight a dragon. The best method to go about this is to just use sleep and just spam attack until he's dead, and hopefully luck will be on your side. What is this dragon guarding? Well, what else would a dragon be guarding? It's the princess. It's now your job to escort her back to the castle, and I have to say that it's kind of cute that he carries her along the way. Now how he manages to fight enemies with her in his hands, and why she can't just use her own 2 legs to walk on her own, is beyond me. What's kind of funny is just how few people have different dialogue when you're escorting her. Like, the inn doesn't question that you're holding Princess Gwaelin in your arms, and allows the two to rent a room for the night. When Gwaelin is returned to the castle, not all that much changes, she just gives you her love. Literally, it's an actual item that lets the player know how much experience we need until the next level up, and where we are relative to the castle. Using it, you can locate the last of the 3 items, Edric's token, in the poison swamp. Only there's nothing actually holding the player back from finding this item. If you know where it is, there's no need to actually rescue Princess Gwaelin, meaning you can beat the whole game with her still being trapped in that cave. Conversely, Gwaelin, after being rescued, never actually needs to be returned to the castle, so you can just lug her around the world, even to the final boss. With the free items, the hero takes them to this creepy old man, who uses them to create the rainbow drop. With it, a route to the Dragon Lord's castle opens, and yeah, that's it. We're right at the end of the game already. We would be, if it wasn't for the insane amount of grinding and preparation needed in the final fight. But I feel like I've been a bit too negative on this game. So before we tackle all that, I'm going to talk about some aspects of this game that I really do like. For one, Dragon Quest was one of the earlier NES titles to come with a save feature, or at least a North American release. A big issue I have with a lot of NES games is how few of them come with a save feature. You either have to input long and tedious passwords to pick up where you left off, or beat the whole thing in one sitting. But Dragon Quest, like the original Legend of Zelda, came with a battery, and that battery powers an SRAM chip to save data when the power's off. You would assume that after almost 4 decades that these batteries would have gone dead, but no, the battery in my copy still works just fine despite being like a decade older than me. And this is not a rare occurrence, because out of every old game I own that used a battery backup to save, only one has died. That being Pokemon Red, which isn't surprising with those games being notorious for it. I've seen some people claim that these batteries might last up to 70 years, which is unlikely in my opinion, yet if that's true, that's completely insane. What's also insane is just how cheap Dragon Quest 1 is, only going for 20 bucks on eBay. I got my copy back in 2020 for about 15 bucks, and it even came with its manual, a rarity to find still included with NES games these days. Moving back on track, I love how open the world is, with there being very few inaccessible areas even from the start of the adventure. The only thing holding the player back from certain areas are the enemy's overwhelming strength. The simplicity of a lot of aspects, especially story, are also a breath of fresh air for me right now. Don't get me wrong, I love my rich, in-depth 30-hour games. It's just a nice change of pace to have one you can summarize in under a minute for a change, and not have hours of cutscenes or dialogue. Underground sections are cool too. They have a creepy 8-bit feel that modern games don't accomplish, and the deeper you go, the slower, deeper, and creepier the music becomes. Magic is a necessary skill if you hope to have any chance of finishing this game. There's the given spells that heal, do damage to foes, put them to sleep, or block them from using magic. However, a few spells were added that are not only useful, but you wouldn't really expect in such an early iteration of the genre, such as Repel to prevent fights with weak enemies, Outside to leave a dungeon, or return to the castle. My only gripe is how late some of the spells are learned, with Repel not being learned until level 15. And that reminds me. Alright, back to trying to get strong enough to beat the Dragon Lord. Up to this point, grinding has taken up hours of time, however, that's nothing compared to the difficulty spike here. When I unlocked the Dragon Lord's castle, I was around level 12. What level do you need to be to have a fighting chance? At least level 17 to learn Heal More, which doesn't sound too bad, but just look at this chart showing off how much experience needed to get to a certain level. The experience needed to level up keeps going up exponentially each time. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, it takes 4,000 XP points to get to level 12, but it takes 22,000 to get to level 19. So basically, it takes 5 times more XP to get from where I am currently to where I want to be, from the start of the game to where I am now. Sure, stronger enemies do give out more experience, but the XP they give doesn't even come close to keep up with the rising requirements for each level up. To get from level 1 to 2, you need to kill 7 slimes, but to get from level 19 to 20, you have to kill almost 100 demon knights. It all feels like that one episode of South Park where the boys have to spend an ungodly amount of time killing wild boars to level up in World of Warcraft. Honestly, I'm this close to just giving up and just beating the Dragon Lord in another save file someone owned the game before me made, where the mad lad Quentin managed to get up to level 19. I've done everything else in the game. I rescued Princess Gwaelin, I got the free items. I mean, it doesn't really matter if I waste an extra 5 hours of my life just so I can beat the Dragon Lord in my name. Fine, but this isn't gonna be easy. After hours of grinding, I am finally strong enough to probably beat the Dragon Lord. I am, level 20, so I swear to God if I lose to him again, I'm gonna be pissed. Alright, let's get this over with. The castle is large, it's a maze, and the enemies are relentless. But once you get through all that, it's time for the guy who's caused me nothing but pain for the past 6 hours, the Dragon Lord. He offers the player a chance to join him, you have to say no or else the game freezes up, and then it's the final battle. He's insanely easy though, only taking like 3 hits to beat. But what's this? Another form? Yeah, well, we might be used to this kind of thing today. Multiple form boss fights were pretty uncommon back in the mid-80s. His dragon form is insanely tough to take down. You do very little damage to him, he does a lot of damage to you, so the only way to win is to attack, heal, and attack until he dies. Despite spending all those hours grinding and getting the special equipment, I still came very close to losing this battle. Look, I get that Dragon Quest 1 is once again the first of its kind and all that, but come on. The sheer amount of work necessary for a 3-minute fight is kind of ridiculous. After the Dragon Lord is beaten and the kingdom is saved, the king offers the throne of a new hero, but he refuses his offer and instead wants to go out and become king of a land he discovers himself, and Princess Gwaelin goes with him. Buddy, this is the medieval era, with, the exception of Antarctica, like, there's pretty much no places on Earth that have no people on them, unless, yeah. My tangent over, Dragon Quest 1 is a good game deep down, but the serious flaws it has almost ruins the whole thing. From cryptic goals to very simplistic gameplay, and most of all, the whole spending 90% of your playtime just fighting enemies to get stronger. I can't hate this game, however. Sure, it took a lot of my weekend trying to beat it, yet there's a certain charm found within. The simplicity, the freedom, the feeling of overcoming a challenge that almost every modern gamer would just give up on, all add up to create a unique journey. If you want to try your hand at this journey too, well, there are a lot of better ways to do so than the original NES version. First, there is a remake on the Game Boy Color that fixes many issues that plague the original, most notably increasing the amount of experience each enemy gives out when defeated, to make leveling up way easier. And on top of that, it comes with Dragon Quest 2 on the same cart. An earlier remake came out on the SNES, being even better than the Game Boy Color version as I hear, although that version only came out in Japan. And finally, there is yet another remake, this time for mobile devices in 2013. I could have played any of these better versions, or at the very least emulated the NES version to ease my pain, and honestly, I kind of wish I would have. Ah well, at the very least, I can say I finished possibly the most tedious, unfair, and difficult JRPG of all time.